Okay guys, so I've been wanting to film this video for quite some time now. So here we are. Hey guys, my name is Simone, this is Simone Says, and welcome back to another video. I'm looking at the outline for this video that I wanted to film, and I was so optimistic on how this would go. But when everything started going differently than how I thought it was supposed to go, I wrote everything down. So if you see me looking down at my laptop, I'm looking at the story. I don't even think I told you what this video is about. Wow. So I think it was not last year, but about 2 years ago, I failed my first course in grad school. And to say the least, it was traumatic. The way that I want to kind of tell the story is in an unedited, or as unedited as I possibly can. I don't know. Not me stalling. Okay. So I wrote down the story. Okay, hold on. If the lighting changes a little bit, the sun is setting and I can't control that. So if the light changes, I will probably use my LED lamp to fix it, but it is what it is. Okay, that was rough, so let's start that again. Hey guys, my name is Simone, this is Simone Says, and welcome back to another video. About 2 years ago, I failed my first course in grad school, and you are allowed to only fail, you're only allowed 2 chances to fail a course, so I was on edge. To say the least, it was traumatic. If you guys didn't know, I'm a 3rd-year international optometry student at South University. I'm Canadian, so I came here to go to school, and for the longest time, school was all I was good at. That's all. I wasn't social. I didn't have a crazy amount of friends. I was very shy, very introverted, didn't have too many hobbies. So school has, for the longest time, been the only thing that I'm good at. And so failing courses literally brings me to tears. So there was a lot of crying, a lot. This was not fun, but I want to share the story with you guys. So I wrote down the story as it was happening, or when it was happening, and I knew that I wanted to share this with you guys at some point. I have been delaying me telling this story for so long, or filming this video, so we're finally here today and we're filming it. If the light changes, I'm really, really sorry. I will try and fix it as much as I can, but for the most part, this video will be unedited to make it real and raw. I don't know, whatever. So since we do not have time to waste time, let's get into the story. Okay, so where's the actual, oh, this is the story. Okay, so is this really what I did? Okay, did I really? Wow. Okay, so apparently, I don't even remember this, but I got up real early in the morning and went to the gym and did a workout, trying to make my day as normal as any other day, trying to make me the least amount, the least anxious as I possibly can, by making the day as normal as any other day. I have to, we're gonna start again. So I got dressed, I packed up my stuff, and I must not have heard my lenses in my lens kit as I picked it up, packing up my stuff, because by the time that I got to school and I picked up my lens kit again, all I can hear was my lenses dancing around in my lens kit. All of my lenses were loose. If you've seen a lens kit, I'll probably try and insert a clip of my lens kit. All of my lenses were loose, just in the lens kit. This is where the panic started to settle in, and I wasn't even in the school yet. I haven't even walked into the building. I started deep breathing, because that's what I try to do to calm myself down whenever I start to feel anxious. Started deep breathing. One of my professors saw me as I was entering the building at the same time, and she's like, hey Simone. I'm like, hey Dr. So-and-so. She goes, how's it going? I'm like, my lenses just fell out in my kit. She was actually one of the professors for that practical. So, she, I don't even think I'm telling the story correctly. So this was my practical day. I did this practical a few times, and I just never did it well enough for me to pass the practical portion of this course, and that is what ended up in me failing the course. So This is me trying to prepare for my practical. But she must have saw what happened, and once I got to the lab, it was around 7:52. I was supposed to be there at 8 o'clock, so I was a little bit early. Not as early as I wanted to be, but you know. But I wasn't worried about the time because they kind of let you start whenever you are ready. So I wasn't worried about it, but like I wasn't really worried about the time, but I was like, oh my gosh, I have to sit here and reorganize my lenses, and then I have to like put out all of my equipment and then get ready for the practical. So I was panicking internally. She came over and she kind of helped me like fix my stuff. But before the practical, we had a quiz. So I started with the quiz, and once I finished the quiz, I started like setting up my equipment. I made sure to take out everything and check everything. My pens, make sure to check my pen light, my retinoscope, everything, make sure everything was working. I checked the keratometer to make sure that it wasn't too high up or too far down, and it seemed fine. It seemed fine. And then I checked the phoropter. Everything was fine. Everything seemed fine until I realized that the clip that holds the cards, like there's this like pole and there's the clip on it, and you put your FC, like your like those cards, you put the cards in there, it was loose. So I had to use like an alcohol pad over the cards to hold it in there. Now I started worrying because I was like, I'm already so nervous, I'm already like anxious, and my hands were shaking so much because of this. And I'm like, there's no way that this is a good idea. I feel like this video is going to be so edited because I'm looking down so much, but I'm doing the best I can. So in my head, I'm like, okay, my hands are already shaky because I'm nervous and I haven't even started the practical yet. And I'm already like panicking as it is. And now I have to worry about this alcohol pad holding up these cards in this pin, and you have to take the cards out, flip them to the right side for FCC, and put them back in. And I'm like, if my hands are shaking, it's gonna be a mess. This is not a good idea. So I was worried about that too. So I finished setting up, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go to the washroom. I'm gonna say a little prayer. I'm going to try and relax because I am on the edge. I'm asking God to take away the spirit of nervousness and just make me calm, and make me calm in knowing that I know the skill and that I know what I'm doing. Because the last six practices that I did for this practical were good. My times were good. I did all the skills really well. Everything was good. And I've done practice. I've practiced in front of preceptors before, and I've been fine. Like I wasn't nervous at all. But like, as I normally do, I started to worry about all the mistakes that I would make, all the things that I would miss, and all the things that I would forget. And that just made me more nervous. So I returned from the washroom and I made sure that my patient was ready. And when she said yes, I said, okay. And we began the practical. So I was so nervous that my hands were already shaking, like intensely. And I'm pretty sure that my preceptor sitting like 2 feet away, she was on this side, I think, 2 feet away 2 feet away from me could see my hands shaking. And I couldn't count how many times my pens fell on the floor. So one thing that I made sure to do for my practical is not bring any of those pens that have like the retractable, like little push thingy at the top, because I have a bad habit of like, literally as soon as I use the pencil, I push it down and I use it and push it. I'm not doing that on the practical. So I only got pens that had caps, but because I didn't put the cap back on it, they would roll off the table. But luckily I made sure to bring like 3 pens with me, and I had them all laid out. So one fell, I didn't even worry about it. I just went to my next pen. So we're, getting through the tests in the 35-minute practical, and I knew that I did one of the tests wrong. I realized my mistake, and I realized my mistake and I had to start the test again. This is where it really started to go downhill, because once I made that mistake, I was like, okay, you just wasted all this time doing the test wrong, and now you have to do it again to waste more time. You're not finishing on time. There's no way, you're not finishing on time. So I try not to whenever I was practicing, I try not to look at the stopwatch too much, because you have your own stopwatch up. And I made that mistake. I looked up at the stopwatch and I'm like, damn, whenever I practice, like, usually my time, oh my God, I'm cold and I'm shivering. Okay. Whenever I would practice, this was not the time that I was at. I'm like, I'm taking forever. This is like, I'm like so many minutes past like where I should be. This is going really, really downhill really, really fast. I also started to breathe really, really deeply. And by how deep I was breathing, you would think that I was doing some kind of yoga. I was breathing so hard, trying to calm myself down, but I don't know what was, it didn't work. It wasn't working. So whenever I was practicing, I used one of the tests as like a checkpoint to tell myself, you know, if I'm at this time with this test, then I'm on the right track. I'm doing pretty well with time. But when I looked at the clock and I started said test, I was at maybe 14 minutes. And usually on a good day, I was at like 8 or 10 minutes. So I'm like, I am screwed. It's over. This is it. So the breathing got heavier. I don't even think it could have at that point, but somehow I did. Now, remember when I said that the keratometer looked fine? It was fine. It seemed fine. So there's a piece of the keratometer that like covers your eye, like occludes one of the patient's eyes while they're in the keratometer, and it was loose. So I didn't know that I could just ask the patient to hold the keratometer eye occluder for me. So I'm in the keratometer, you know, trying to move it around, turning the knobs, but I have one hand on the occluder to hold it in place. And I'm like moving, trying to maneuver the keratometer. This is wasting more time because I don't have like very precise movement because I'm only using one hand. And so my preceptor literally looks at my patient. She goes, can you hold the occluder for yourself so that someone can use both hands? I don't know. I'm telling you, when I'm under stress, I don't think. All of my common sense out the window. And this is where I started to second guess myself. Never a good idea. Never second guess yourself, especially under pressure. But I did. So my hands are still shaking and like I'm just not balanced. So I go to like pull the phoropter in front of my patient and I must have like pushed it too hard, but like it like went out of whack or went out of alignment. That's the word. It went out of alignment and I kind of just pulled it back into place. You know, just pulled it slightly back to where it needed to be. What I should have done was checked that it was still leveled, which it wasn't. And there was still a few more tests that I had to do with the phoropter, and the entire time it was out of alignment. That didn't help the situation at all. But I finished all the other tests and my preceptor said time, and it was finally over. I was finally done with this thing, or so I thought. So she pulled me aside to show me my like grading sheet and like where I got yeses and where I got noses and like things I did wrong. And I made a lot of stupid mistakes. I made a lot of small, stupid mistakes. But some of the mistakes that I was making were mistakes that I've been making the entire time, but I just never knew they were mistakes. And this is why like it's so important that you get as much practice with a preceptor as you possibly can. That way from the very beginning you're doing it correctly. I know that lab can be such a drag sometimes and it's the last place that you want to be at 5 o'clock. But if your preceptor is willing to stay a little bit extra for you to understand a skill, take advantage of that and, you know, really try and like hone that skill, you know, practice that skill with them watching you so that they can correct your mistakes. Because sometimes like having other students watch you, they may not pick up on the things that the preceptors will because they have like a grading sheet and all that kind of stuff. Does that make sense? But the part that was embarrassing about this entire ordeal was that she was telling me all of the things that I did wrong. And only a few feet away was the rest, like the other like section that had to go next, just waiting at the door to like, you know, so they can start their practical. So one of the girls, after I was finished, one of the girls literally walks in, she goes, I can hear almost everything she was saying to you. And I'm like, thanks. That's what I want to hear right now. And I'm not even like to her, just like a, you know, I don't think I wanted that entire section to hear all the things that I did wrong in my practical. But once like she was done talking, I literally asked her if I can just leave because I was feeling so defeated. I felt so bad. Like I sick to my stomach. Like I felt terrible. All I wanted to do was be in bed with the biggest tub of ice cream, because at the time I was not eating ice cream out of bowls. I was eating them right out of the tub. And that's all I wanted to do. I got my grades back later that night, that same night. And I already knew that I failed the practical before I even got the grades. So it was time for the retest. So I went back to school and I started practicing again. I practiced a lot. I think I even have a vlog somewhere on my channel of me going to the clinical skills lab and practicing for the practical retest. And every time that I would practice with someone, they would try and encourage me and tell me it would be okay, but sometimes nobody's words will get past your own thoughts, especially when they're super loud. And for me, I'm going to look at all the things that can go wrong before I look at how many things can go right. Because when it goes wrong, it feels worse, and it feels like it feels worse for longer. And so if you're prepared for that, at least mentally, it kind of just takes the surprise element out of, the worst case scenario actually happening, if that makes sense. I try not to do that as much anymore, but that's definitely the kind of mind space that I was in, or mindset that I was in at the time. Something was going wrong, I'm like, okay. Or if something that I had to do, I'm like, okay, these are all the things that can go wrong. So if it happens, you're not surprised. You know what can go wrong. You thought about it. Not a great way to be, but it was like a protective mechanism, I guess. I don't know. So, surprise, surprise, I failed the retest. It was just as traumatic. I think at this point, I kind of stopped telling the story as with so much detail as I started at the beginning of the story. But I failed the retest, and it was like a retest with an item repeat. So I just had to repeat 2 of the tests. I think it was JCC and cover test, I believe it was. And I just didn't understand JCC at that time. It's so, I don't know. I wasn't understanding JCC power at the time, and I did it wrong again. So that basically, and I think I had another retest after that. I think it's 2 retests. I think I failed that one too. Or it could have been 1 and that was just the JCC one. I don't remember, but I failed the retest, whichever one, I failed it. And so that basically meant that I failed the course, because you had to pass the practical in order to pass the course. So I failed clinical skills 2. Sorry, ran out of storage. But because my GPA was not bad at the time, they let me just retake the written exam and retake the practical. And would you believe I still had to do a part of that practical as a retest? I still was nervous. The amount of, and I think I've said this in one of my vlogs before, the last time that I did a retest for this practical, the second time around while I was taking it, I was breathing so hard and so deeply that my preceptor, when I finished, she's like, Simone, you were hyperventilating. I finished that practical and I literally stepped away and I started crying. I was like, I messed it up. I'm failing this course for a second time. That's it. I'm out of grad school. They're gonna kick me out. That's it. What? You only get 2 tries. And I just messed up one of them. I have been on edge ever since that day, because if I fail another course, that's it for me. I'm running out of space and light here, but I just want to, what was I saying last? Yeah, I walked away from the end of that practical literally crying because I'm like, I don't have any more chances. This is it. I have been on edge ever since. Oh yeah, that's what I was saying. I have been on edge ever since that whole thing, because I don't have, if I fail another course, that's it. And could you imagine failing out of grad school in your 3rd year? Excuse me? So, but while I was taking the CS2 written exam and studying for that written exam and practicing for that practical, I was I was still in the next semester. I was still studying for all 10 of my other courses in that semester. So it was a lot. I was studying for the CS2 midterm while studying for other midterms, and it was just one extra course and one extra thing to take away my time, because I had to practice for this practical. which made it so much harder for me that semester. Actually, did I get a full pass? I don't remember. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I don't remember. I don't have it written down because after a while, this was just starting to get depressing to have to keep on writing it down. But I did want to tell you guys the story, and that is the story of how I failed my first course in grad school. You know, you have to pass the practical in order to pass the course, and I just kept on failing the practical. Just every which way I could. I just kept on failing the practical. But we are better now. I'd like to say that I am better now. Learned a lot from it. And I've definitely learned a few coping mechanisms or like ways to get myself to be less anxious that have helped me tremendously. Still running out of space. But one of the coping mechanisms that I would say that has helped me the most is confidence. And I don't mean, you know, just being confident in yourself and thinking that you got this and telling yourself that you got it internally and thinking those thoughts. I mean to literally have an outward confidence about yourself. And I literally gave this piece of advice to like a first year a few weeks ago in clinic when he was telling me like what part of the course or what part of the program they were in, and what kind of courses they were going through right now. And I'm like, you know what? And I've talked about this before. In the practical, if you are asking, if you're like, yeah, that's 2 minus 2 inflection. Is that a question? Are you asking them for verification during your practical? The second time around, I'm like, yep, okay, with, against, boom, next. Like, you have to make your statements. I see it as single. You have to be very certain in your answers and what you're saying, and let them know that you see what you're seeing. Because if you make it sound like a question, then you're going to make them actually question what you are doing. And that's when that gives them room to like be like, okay, maybe that wasn't the correct way, or maybe they. Okay, I'm really running low on space here. But I just want to tell you guys, be as confident in what you're doing, not just, you know, in your thoughts and like telling yourself that you're doing a good job. Like, literally be confident in what you're saying that you're seeing. Tell them what you're seeing. Tell them that they are seeing what you're seeing. I am really running out of light here and I'm getting a little too lazy to get up and get that LED lamp, but I really hope that you guys liked this video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comment section down below. I would love for this video to get as far as possible, and plus it would just really help me out. If this is not your first time seeing my face, please consider subscribing, and until next time guys, stay hydrated, stay motivated, and mind your business. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.